Hi, this is Dan Pastorini, and you're listening to The Grilling Truth.
Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of The Truth About Fantasy Football, the Grilling Truths Radio Network's weekly fantasy football show, brought to you by Gridiron Mo, the new interactive football app that lets you, the user, call what you think an offense or defense will do in a live NFL game and compete against others around the country. Check it out at gridironmo.com or thegrillingtruth.net. I'm your host, Matt Andruscavage, for the Fantasy Football Show, and I'd like to welcome in my co-hosts, Oz Davis and Aaron Zepnick.
How you doing this week, Matt?
I'm doing okay. Had some technology issues, but I think we're all resolved, so looking forward to a better week than I had today. But hey, NFL, we got fantasy football coming up, and we had a game on Thursday, so that always will cure any woes.
We got a game on Thursday. We got a game on Thursday, but it's NFL Network only, right? So I don't know.
Oh, it's NFL Network only? I didn't know that.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
I hate the NFL sometimes.
Yeah, see, there you go. See?
I hate them.
It's not all good. It's not all good.
I like it better when they stream on Twitter. I thought that was actually really cool how they did that. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy. I don't remember the Yahoo one going real well last year. I think that was last year.
Yeah, the London. The London game was fantastic. On Yahoo was fantastic. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, so that did go well. I don't remember it.
Yep.
I don't think I was actually on there, but I did pay attention to the Bills-Jets on Twitter. I thought that was really, really neat.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you mean the colorblind bowl?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I don't get me started with uniforms and jerseys and the NFL's policies and some of the dumb things they try to do.
I'm actually one of the few people, okay, not so much the color rush uniforms, but I do like monochrome. I do like the solid color uniforms, and I really don't like the white pants and the random color jersey. I really don't like that. So on the face of it, this color rush is a decent idea. But as soon as they announced that game, I'm like, now wait a second, red and green. What about colorblind people? They're not going to be able to see this, right? And sure enough, that's exactly what happened.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it blew my mind. I was just like, how can they – this is the first time they're going to do it, and they chose those two colors? I mean, is this a joke? Did they do it on purpose? I mean, and then that's exactly what happened. You know, some significant percentage of Americans is colorblind, like 7-8% or something like that. And so, you know, they couldn't see this game. I was just like, wow, this was not planned well.
Right. Yeah, the color rush jerseys, yeah, I guess it's an interesting concept, but honestly,
most of them are terrible.
I feel like I'm watching not necessarily even a college game. I feel like I'm watching a really bad indoor football game.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. XFL, dude. It's
right.
Back.
All we need is Vince McMahon and Jesse the Body Ventura doing all the announcing.
And then he hate me on the back of the jersey.
Oh, yes, he hate me.
Rod Smart.
I remember that guy.
Rod Smart.
Yep.
Rod Smart, that's right.
That's
an
important trivia question.
Well, if you had him on your fantasy team back in 2003, I think he returned at least one kickoff for a touchdown. That's about all he did.
Wow.
That's pretty accurate.
Pure fantasy football stats.
Well, it's kind of like having Jonas Gray. I don't remember if it was last year or the year before on the Patriots. We had like 50 points. Everybody picked him up, and then he never did a thing again.
Yeah, I heard he's going to start at quarterback this week for the Patriots.
That wouldn't be surprising. I actually saw an article that said Bill Belichick puts together a quarterback using duct tape, a broomstick, and a coat hanger.
Yeah, and Rod Smart.
Yeah, they said they were going to have Vinny Testaverde come back and quarterback for him.
Oh, right.
Very possible. You never know.
Interception. Fantastic.
Well, why don't we get right into it with a little bit of this week's studs and duds. So, Aaron, we'll let you handle this. What did you see?
Yeah, I have quite a few, but I wanted to kind of limit the list here. Studs, I'll go by position here. Some studs that really came. One came through for me in the clutch. Drew Brees had an unbelievable night for me last night in one of my leagues. Ended up with 35 points or right around there, depending on what your scoring, rules are. But had 35 points. Running backs. This one. There's the obvious, like LeGarrette Blount had a really nice night Thursday night, but Devontae Freeman last night, I'm sitting there down 30, and he gets me 31 on that last 48-yard jaunt, which was nice. I ended up winning 105, so it was really nice. Carlos Hyde had a really nice week, which was unexpected. I think we talked about sitting him last week. So if you listen to Matt and us, you probably made a mistake, and we apologize. But if you didn't listen to us and you started him, he ended up with about 24 points. Jeremy Hill had a nice week at running back. Marvin Jones at receiver against my Packers had an unbelievable week. What a stud week he had. T.Y. Hilton finally did something. Allen Robinson. Tight ends, Kobe Fleener looked really good.
There you go. Yeah,
and I know I talked about him a lot in the preseason, and I was very happy with his play last night. He looked like Drew Brees actually looked like he had a downfield tight end target again, which he'd been lacking since Jimmy Graham got traded to the Seahawks. As far as duds, Carson Palmer, I think he had 6.5 points this week. Huge dud. Blake Bortles has continued to struggle, as Oz knows. That offense has got to get it together, though, and I think this week it may be the cure for them. They're playing Indianapolis, who their secondary's banged up. I hope that this is the week they get it together.
And they're at home.
They're not at home. They're in London.
Oh, yes, that is true. They're in London.
I did not realize that.
I'll talk about the London game later, but this Jacksonville team, at first you would think that they're really easy to read because they're used to this, right? And, I mean, the team this year is more or less the same it's been the last couple of years. The majority of guys are still there. So you figured they'd get over it, but, wow, you look back at the record and it doesn't tell you much. I mean, this game could go any possible way. So I think London factors into it, but I will discuss this game later on because there are a few other important things as well. Jacksonville could put up a lot of points.
So the other duds I had, running back wise, I think a lot of people went out and picked up Jerick McKinnon or Matt Asiata in replacement hopes of Adrian Peterson. Neither one really did a whole lot. There was Jeremy Langford got hurt, so that was kind of a dud if you have Jeremy Langford as one of your RBs. I think there was another stud that I wanted to hit on was LaShawn McCoy, and I didn't expect that against Arizona either. In fact, in my Grueling Truth League, I benched him this week, and I regretted it. I ended up getting lucky and winning, but that was a bad GM move by me. But receivers duds. Amari Cooper had subpar week. Randall Cobb. Julio Jones. Thankfully got me a win because I was playing against him. He had one catch. And then tight ends.
He is so hobbled.
Yeah, he is. And tight ends, I got excited because Gronk was finally playing. I started him in 2 leagues and got a big fat 0. And two guys that were duds this week that surprised me quite a bit, actually. I know Minnesota's got a good defense, but I thought Greg Olsen would be a big part of the game plan with Carolina. And Olsen and Newton did not do a whole lot. So that's my duds and studs.
It's just that
and,
on that last one, it's just because I think that most of us don't know how good this Vikings defense is, but I suspect it's very, very good.
It's real good. It's one of the best in the league.
Yeah, I like the way these guys can shut down the run and the pass. They don't bring a lot of pressure, but they bring more than enough to rattle quarterbacks on third down. I really like what they're doing. It's early, but and it's early, and I should say it's early, and they could get better by the end of the year. So It's not Olsen's fault.
I think Minnesota's
Olsen will be back.
Minnesota's a juggernaut this year.
Well, back when Mike Zimmer got that job, they actually posted a thing in the Press Gazette here in Green Bay about his record versus the top, I think it was the 5 or 10 quarterbacks that were active at the time, and his record was his stats, he was like the best defensive coordinator against Rodgers, Brady, Manning, Breeze, Palmer, all these quarterbacks that have played against him, at least a couple of times. And it was jaw-dropping, the stats, and I said that's going to be a good hire for them and a bad hire if you're a Packer fan to have to face a coach like that going up against, your offense. Real quick, though, on the defense, before I know Oz is going to get to the defenses later, I just wanted to say Kansas City's defense this week, huge numbers.
Oh, yeah.
As well as Buffalo. The Buffalo Bills, believe it or not, had a really nice week defensive, in the defensive fantasy points. I think they're 6th overall in fantasy points for defenses, which is crazy.
Right.
What about the Rams? What about my Rams? They had an awesome day on defense, finally.
The Rams as well were a huge surprise. If you had told me at the beginning of the year that the Rams would be sitting at 2-1, the Eagles would be 3-0, and then you'd have Arizona and Carolina at 1-2, I would have told you you're on drugs.
Yeah, that's how it works, though. That's how it works. It'll clear up, but for now, it's very strange. The Eagles, I think, are actually pretty good. The more I watch them, I think they're actually really good. They're going to be a tough out.
They're not a fantasy team. Like if you have guys on their team that are on your fantasy team, they're not putting up huge fantasy numbers. They're just a team that's kind of scrappy and they do what they got to do. They won 34-3 and nobody really went off the charts with fantasy numbers.
Right. Carson Wentz.
Matt, the Eagles.
Is one of the Eagles
are. Sorry, go ahead.
Carson Wentz is one of these guys, though, that I think is worth picking up. But I wanted to ask you, Aaron, about your studs. There's a lot of guys that you named. I think there were a number of them, like Drew Brees. He's going to be up and down all year because he's good at home and he doesn't put up a lot on the road. What I was wondering is, when you're going through that list of studs, how many of those do you really think are reliable week in and week out that you can count on? When you were reading them off, I'm going inconsistent. This week was a stud, but I'm wondering how many of those guys will be on the duds list next week.
And that's very true, but you look at the guys that were drafted super high, like the A.J. Green, the Odell Beckham, Brandon Cooks is another dud that I forgot to mention. A lot of these guys that were drafted ahead of some of those guys that I listed haven't been very reliable so far either. So
yeah.
there's an argument that I would have to look this up, but I would bet that Carson Wentz may be right near Aaron Rodgers as far as fantasy points.
Oh yeah, Rodgers is not putting up yards. He got those touchdowns, but he's not putting up yards. And then in the second half, they went into full prevent mode. So you just don't really know what you're getting week to week. I have Rodgers on my Dynasty League, and I got good points out of him, but it could have been a lot more if they were more aggressive.
Yeah, and I don't understand why McCarthy does that. He gets into conservative mode, and teams come back and beat us or almost beat us, and that game should have never been a 1 or 2 possession game. We're up 31-3. It's like we went to sleep in the second half.
Right, but as far as Carlos Hyde goes, if you watched the game at all, I'm not sure if you guys did, if you saw any of it, but Carlos Hyde was completely shut down until the second half when the game was pretty much out of reach, and all of a sudden they kept feeding him. I couldn't believe he was even in the game, much less getting productive yardage. When it mattered, they couldn't move the ball with Carlos Hyde very well. And then all of a sudden, I look at the stats, I'm like, 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wow. But most of it happened in the fourth quarter, that surprised me.
Yeah, and the thing with fantasy football is you never know when it's going to be consistent. I mean, there's your guys, like C.J. Anderson's been pretty consistent all year. And Blunt, guys like that have been consistent so far, and I think it'll continue for most of those guys. But, Antonio Brown's had some up and down weeks. He hasn't really done what Antonio Brown can do yet. But, I mean, there's a lot of guys that it's been a weird fantasy year so far. Like, it's really been a roller coaster of ups and downs, and the quarterbacks are going to come to light. You're going to see the top guys be the top guys, I think. And same thing with the tight ends. I think, Kelsey's been pretty consistent. Olsen's been pretty good. But Jordan Reed, a lot of people are so high on him, and I think with their 3 tight ends that they use there, I mean, he is the pass-catching option at tight end. But I don't trust their offensive output and their production that they're going to be consistent from week to week. So
no, they probably won't be. Another dud, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Oh, did he hurt me? -7 points. 6 interceptions, 1 pick six. It was a killer.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. I don't have him or didn't play against him in any of my leagues. But
awful. I got rid of him and I picked up Sam Bradford. Bradford is killing it right now. So I'm hoping that'll continue. But I got a number of sit-em and start-ems as we move into the next segment here. For this week, we got some pretty good matchups. I think we got some favorable matchups. Usually when you watch teams like Pittsburgh and Kansas City, they don't play quite as well on the road fantasy-wise, but at home, you can really count on them. So Pittsburgh actually plays Kansas City this week, but it's in Pittsburgh. So for sitting, I would definitely sit Alex Smith. I mean, we're not going to cover players that you're going to start every week. You're never going to sit DeAndre Hopkins. You're never going to sit Antonio Brown. So you're never going to hear that on our show, no matter what. Even if Antonio Brown is playing against Richard Sherman, you play him. So, but there are guys that you've got on your team that you're tiering. Maybe you've got a 2-quarterback league. You've got maybe a couple different flex positions. And you got some question marks. These are guys that don't risk Alex Smith this week against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's coming off on a humiliating loss. They're at home. They don't play quite as well when they're away from Arrowhead. I would stay away from Alex Smith this week. Another one is Jameis Winston against Denver. Denver's defense did pretty good against Cincinnati, and I would expect that to continue. I think they're going to force Jameis Winston with some mistakes. I'd probably sit him out. Ryan Fitzpatrick's playing Seattle. Don't bother. You got a hobbled Brandon Marshall. I would also sit Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker next week because Richard Sherman will probably be on Eric Decker if they're going to coach that right. Because Marshall, I think they could probably cover him in his zone. I just don't think he's healthy. But Richard Sherman's on Eric Decker, I just don't see him getting a lot of catches. And then
Richard Sherman will be on the left side of the defense. They don't move him.
Sometimes they do. For the most part, you're right. That is true. But there are times that they do. I would just stay away from it either way. I wouldn't risk it. Fitzpatrick's going to be under so much pressure from that defensive line. I wouldn't bother this week. And then lastly for the sits, Eli Manning against Minnesota. I think Eli Manning definitely had a rough game against the Redskins. He could rebound. They do have receivers. But if you've got another option, I would go with that option and have Eli sit this one out. I'm not sure he's going to have a real good game against the Vikings defense. And then for a couple of starts, Carlos Hyde against Dallas. They're at home, coming off a really difficult road trip in Carolina and then in Seattle. Niners play a little bit better at home. This Dallas team is not any one of the good Dallas teams from the last several years. They have a rookie quarterback who's decent, but on the road, I think the Niners defense can bottle him up. But getting back to Carlos Hyde, I think he'll be able to run on that Dallas defense. And I would play Sam Bradford against the Giants. I would definitely play Big Ben against the Chiefs. And 1 second, my tablet cut out there. There we go. Isaiah Crowell, I like him against the Redskins.
Yeah.
And lastly, what is this thing doing? Okay. Golden Tate against the Bears, also Theo Riddick. I think the Lions have a real good chance this week against the Bears. They're in Chicago. And, Aaron, I'm sure you know what Chicago's home record is like. It's pitiful. I would expect the Lions to put up a lot of yards. So, Golden Tate, Theo Riddick, even a guy like Marvin Jones, I think could be a stud this week. And lastly, Brock Osweiler versus the Tennessee Titans. Start him.
I don't want to hear that I'm playing against him this week.
Those are my sits and starts. I don't know where you guys are with those or if you've got a couple other ones.
I wanted to touch on the Marvin Jones thing because I think this guy is a stud in the making.
He's awesome.
I think
he's a good player.
He's vastly underrated.
Yes.
Flying under the radar at Cincy under A.J. Green's shadow. I think that he is a must-start at this point until he gives you a reason not to, unless you have Julio Jones and Antonio Brown or, really good receivers ahead of him. I don't think that you can sit Marvin Jones if you don't have 2 top 10 receivers from the draft. I'm saying, A.J. Green, Julio Jones, Dez Bryant, Odell Beckham, Allen Robinson. I mean, he's got to start right behind that tier. And, I play against him this week too, but I think he's going to have a really good year in Detroit.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You look at Detroit's offense, Golden Tate, Anquan Bolden, Marvin Jones, it's good receiving. Eric Ebron's playing pretty well. I think he caught like 6 balls. And I really like Washington, the rookie running back. Now that Abdullah's gone, him and Theo Riddick, I think they're going to make a good running back tandem. I don't think Riddick's going to get a ton of additional carries. I think they're going to keep him in the role as if Abdullah was there, and I think you're going to see Washington get a lot more carries.
I would agree with that.
See, I disagree with that. I don't like Riddick here. I think the emergence of Jones implies that he's basically going to suck out all the fantasy points of that team, aside from what the tight ends get. And if Ebron has established himself there, then I think those are the only 2 Lions viable going forward. I mean, I've tried running with Detroit Lions halfbacks, and it just doesn't work out. Theo Riddick is not putting up the points this year, whether he's the number 1, number 2, or number 3 option back there. So I don't buy Theo Riddick at all. I'm passing.
I have him on all 3 teams, and I'm glad I have him.
Wow.
Wow. He had 7 catches this week. And in a PPR, 7 catches for 39 yards is 10 points. So if he gets 30 yards rushing, that's 13 points without a touchdown. You get that out of a running back, you're doing pretty darn good.
Yeah, in a PPR league, Theo Riddick is a really good running back. I mean, he's not a great player, but he's a solid player. He's good for 10 to 12 points almost every week, depending on what you got in your roster. That's a good, solid play every week.
Yeah, see, that's what you guys told me at the beginning of the year, especially in PPRs. You got to take Riddick because he's going to get catches, but he made me nuts the first couple of weeks. It's just,
Did you like him this week or did you bench him?
Sorry?
Did you bench him or did you play him this week?
Oh, I didn't play. No, I lost him after week 1. I had him on one of my teams.
You gave up on him immediately.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm Mr. in the Grueling Truth League especially, man, I'm Mr. Waiver Wire this year because I don't like my team. So I'm constantly shuffling guys.
Who do you have to blame for that?
He has 30 fantasy points right now, which is a 10-point average a week. He had 22 of those in the first week with Amir Abdullah healthy. So that's a little bit disturbing to me. However, he's got 11 catches in the last 2 weeks. His catches, he's had at least 4 catches in every game. and he's just not getting the touchdowns. You know, he had 2 touchdowns the first week. He hasn't had a touchdown since, but we're only in week 4. I mean, I don't think it's time to, you know, drop the gavel on him yet, but
Oz disagrees.
I think that you have to stick with guys long enough to see how they pan out. Like, I've been telling my son this for 2 weeks. Like, he's been trading Odell Beckham, and now he finally had a trade go through.
Yeah.
So he gets rid of Odell Beckham, and he got basically the guy who's doing the same thing Odell Beckham's doing in Dez Bryant.
Right.
Oh, jeez. You trade Odell Beckham for Dez Bryant? Are you kidding?
Well, it was a multiplayer trade.
There were some other players involved, but, you know, he got D'Angelo Williams in return. Well, Le'Veon Bell's coming back, so that does nothing. And he gave up, I forget who the other running back is that he gave up, but it wasn't like a stud, you know. But point being is, stand by your guys, stand pat, don't hit the panic button. It's early. If you're 0-3,
yeah, but see,
you might want to start panicking. If you're 1-2 or 2-1,
I've heard the reverse philosophy, and that is this: after week 1, you need to forget your draft. That's it. Draft is done. It's over. Now you're playing week to week. You know, I mean, and so,
yes and no, Oz. Yes and no.
Okay.
Depending on how, when you draft, you're supposed to have kind of a long-term strategy involved, don't you think?
Of course. I just draft terribly this year. That's all.
You listen to me.
Then you got to stick with a guy like Theoretic. He's probably one of your best players. If you had a terrible draft.
Come on now, I'm 1-2 in both my leagues. Isn't that the 49ers record, 1-2?
Yeah, it is. So. But
yeah,
it's also the Carolina Panthers. And
in all seriousness, fellas, if I had gone with Oz's strategy, and I said, okay, you got to forget your draft after week 1.
Right.
There's guys like Jordan Howard now on the waiver wire. Okay, Langford got hurt. So
right.
I should cut Thomas Rawls and pick up Jordan Howard, or I should cut Devontae Freeman after the first couple weeks because he didn't do too much. Then I wouldn't have won this week, and I wouldn't have got 31 out of him. Or I wouldn't have started T.Y. Hilton because he didn't do anything in the first 2 weeks. There's just guys that you got to start them at least 4 or 5 weeks, see how they're doing. Like I have Deshaun Jackson.
That's exactly
on my
right.
If I had panicked and I put Deshaun Jackson in the starting lineup, or I go out and I get a waiver wire guy like Will Fuller, and I start them over T.Y. Hilton, I lose this week. You know, gotta.
Okay, but you can say that about a million things. You know, yeah, sure. If I had started Dak Prescott this week, I would have gotten 5 extra points at quarterback position, and I might have won. But that stuff doesn't matter. And I'd also like to point out that this is not my philosophy. This is just a philosophy that I have heard. And I think there is some credence to it. I think that sometimes you do draft badly. I think that sometimes you see in week 1 or week 2 instantly that your guy is no good. Forget it. It's not going to work, et cetera, et cetera. Now, look, I don't think that you should just jump in and grab dudes off the waiver wire if you're happy with what you got. But some people have Jeremy Hill, and yeah, he scored 2 touchdowns last week, and he does that.
You got to stick with him, though. You can't just dump Jeremy Hill after 2 weeks. Jeremy Hill, maybe you bench him.
I would if I traded him.
Drop him.
That's for sure.
Well, it depends on what you can get for him, I suppose, but when it's harder to trade when he's averaging 2 yards a carry after 2 games. You got to hang on to guys like that because they are talented players. And how good is this waiver wire where you can just replace guys like that?
Okay. Just 2 things. One is that, look, I don't necessarily espouse any of this, but one of my problems, and I think one of a lot of players' problems, is that you get dogmatic about what you expect at the beginning of the season. In like week 6, week 7, you're already thinking the same way you were thinking 3 months ago, and that's no good anymore. Okay? What I see is a lot of people not adapting. And I'm terrified of not doing that because sometimes I do that. The other thing is, dude, it's fantasy football. I can do what I want. You know?
Well, of course. You don't want to win. You can do whatever you want.
If you don't want to
right,
win,
exactly. At the heart of it, you know.
You can do whatever you like,
football.
guys.
Look, I want to have fun. I'm not going to take players that
you
don't
can
want.
trade me right now, AJ Green. And
No, I want AJ Green.
You want AJ Green?
Yeah, I still believe in Green.
But he's had
I'm
two
done
bad weeks
believing
in a
in
row.
Hill. You want Hill? You want Jeremy Hill?
You don't have
No, Jeremy Hill. He's a good player.
Not on the Grilling.
He's not great, but he's a good running back.
Nah, I guess. Mike warned me away from him at the beginning of the year, but it was too late. I drafted him.
Well, in real life, you don't want him. You don't want to give him the ball in a playoff spot. But in fantasy, he's good for. He's good for a good 8-9 games a year.
Okay, so here's what I'll tell you, Oz. I think your team is going to be just fine.
Oh wow! Well,
you have.
What's his team? What's your team, Oz?
No.
You have a legit problem at your RB2. You have a legit issue at RB2. If I were you, I'd be looking to trade one of your receivers for an RB2. Because
what's
you
your
have
running backs?
He has Latavius Murray, Rashad Jennings, Ryan Matthews, and Chris Johnson.
I thought he has Jeremy Hill.
Well,
no,
Chris Johnson isn't. No, on Yahoo I have Jeremy Hill.
I see. Yeah, you do have a running back problem, but there's a couple guys that you probably can go out and get.
Yes, I do, and I have a list of them.
Well, let's hear it. What's your list? Let's move into your segment with the waiver wires and the streaming defenses, because we got about 10 minutes.
Okay. Running back. All right, I'll start at running back since we're starting there. Actually, I didn't find too much outstanding on the waiver wire. There's a couple of pickups you can make, but the guy that I'm looking at, and it's no surprise he's already been name dropped in this podcast. The guy that I'm looking at is Jordan Howard, 5th round rookie out of Indiana, but he's gonna be the starter in Chicago, and they don't have any other options there. Seems like a decent player. He got 9 carries in the last game for 45 yards. So could be something there. The thing that's stressing me out, you who just looked at my roster, is the Rashad Jennings question. A lot of people are getting on the, let's see if I can pronounce this one correctly, the Orleans Darkwa bandwagon.
Yep, that's correct.
A lot of people are talking about him lately. But the thing, because Shane Vereen is out now for the foreseeable future, but the thing about the Giants is, and, Odell Beckham's problem is that there's too many options there. And it's pretty wild considering you mentioned before how Eli had a bad game in week 3. Well, he wasn't very good in week 2 either. I believe the offense did not score a touchdown in the Saints game. So, there are some serious problems producing offense in New York. They'll probably be okay by the end of the year, but right now, wow. I'm not going near Darkwa at all. I think things are getting split up too much there. So there's probably other running backs on the waiver wire, but those are the guys.
Washington from Detroit.
Sorry?
Washington from Detroit, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of David. He looks like David Johnson.
Yeah, David Johnson, who scored me half a point this week or something like that. Right. No, not David Johnson. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Chris Johnson. Oh,
Chris
right.
Johnson.
Let's see. Who else do I got?
Chris
Well, I got issues at quarterback because, as you guys know, my starting quarterback in both my leagues is
Blake Bortles.
Right. Who I hate now. I can't. I'm so disappointed.
You're off the Blake Bortles.
Oh my!
Blake Bortles and Farrell Cooper.
Well, Farrell, I'm not off the Farrell bandwagon.
You're being patient with a guy who has 0 catches.
Oh, well, I mean, come on. I knew he wasn't going to do much in the first half of the year or something. Besides, this is Jeff Fisher's team. The rule is any rookie has to sit out for 4.5 years before they get to play.
True.
So Farrow, we're going to see Farrow. He's going to be awesome when he does play in 2023. But in any case, looking at quarterbacks, looking at somebody to pick up, and the waiver wire, at least in my 12-teamer league, is pretty much what you'd expect. The Ryans are at the top. You can get Fitzpatrick or Tannehill are 57 and 56% available in Yahoo. But the one that's freaking me out is Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is owned in 21% of Yahoo leagues. I mean, I was thinking about picking him up last week. Now, this is kind of a tough sell. Now, the thing is, the stats say he's got 256-plus yards a game. He's got 5 touchdowns in 3 games, and he's got, 0 interceptions, I believe the number is? Is it 0 or is it 1? I think it's 0, right? So that works out to about 20 fantasy points. Now, again, it's not mind-blowing, but wow. I mean, this guy...
Not bad for a waiver wire
this guy seems to be the real deal. I mean, I guess people are sketchy because he's a rookie, but, geez, I mean, 4 out of 5 leagues don't have a team that owns this guy. I mean, I'll pick him up. I'm picking him up. If I can get him, I'll take him. Okay, so what else? Oh, yeah, wide receiver. Well, how about that Terrell Pryor? Sorry, go ahead.
Real quick, if you're going to pick up a quarterback, the best one available in our league right now, in the Grueling Truth League, is Ryan Tannehill, who's actually averaging 24 points a week. He's the 6th highest quarterback as far as ranking at the position in fantasy points right now.
Yeah, and I bet he's available in a lot of leagues, too.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying. He's available in over half of the leagues in Yahoo. So Tannehill is up there, but who do they have this week? They have not a very nice defense this week.
They play Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. Are you kidding? You can
right.
Totally. Jarvis Landry's going to have a good game.
Wow. Okay. All right. Maybe
Cincinnati is regressing. I'm telling you.
Okay. All right. Maybe I've been listening to Good Pastor too much, but
no, he'll tell.
Okay.
We talked about it today. He agrees.
I can't wait for the Pick'em show.
Oh, Mark Cooper's going to roast him tonight.
I know.
Anyway, we got about 4 minutes. You got any more waiver wire pickups there, Oz?
Yeah, in any case, I want to point this out real quick. I'm probably going to start Dak Prescott because he's playing the San Francisco 49ers. Okay. At wide receiver, you don't need me to tell you about Terrell Pryor, who had the sickest game with the sickest statistics, and they were interesting statistics. 75% unowned in Yahoo. Here's a really interesting one. Adam Humphries with Tampa Bay might be the number one guy there. Might be. I don't know. They have options out there. Last game, 100 yards, 12 targets, 9 catches. He's owned in 1% of leagues. He's ranked number 92 overall at Yahoo.
Is he a running back or a receiver?
Receiver.
Okay. Maybe
the top option there. Okay. I don't see too much at tight end. Unfortunately, the secret is out with Dennis Pitta. He was at about 25% owned last week. He's about 62% this week. You've probably missed him. You may have a chance, but you've probably missed picking him up. And let me ask you guys this before we talk defenses really fast. Who are the top 2 fantasy tight ends in the league this year? At least according to Yahoo. Who are the top 2? Yeah, exactly. So should I just spare you the guess?
Yeah, just tell us because we got about 2 minutes.
You've actually name-dropped one of these guys. The top 2, according to Yahoo, are Zach Miller and Jack Doyle. Now, these guys are available in 59% and 89%, respectively, in Yahoo leagues. I know Doyle, for example, is out there in a lot of leagues in a lot of formats. And your boy Vance McDonald is free in about 78% of Yahoo leagues. Now, we're still waiting for him to really break out, and I don't really trust that San Francisco.
I think he'll have a good week this week.
Yeah, see, there you go. But we were already pimping the San Francisco offense. Okay, let's talk about streaming defenses, my favorite part. Again, my schema is basically what you're doing is you're looking for a game that the sportsbook has a high over-under on and yet a high point spread for the winner. Or you can just go the old-fashioned way. There's a couple of really good old-fashioned matchups this week. We've got an angry Houston Texans. They're -6.5 against the Titans. I think that's a defense that you probably already have. You should start.
J.J. Watt is going to miss the season.
Is going to miss. That's right. That's right.
He's going to be out for the season.
That's
right.
I
just dropped him. Just so you know on that. That will affect the Texans.
Against the Titans, this book reflects that injury. It still says the over/under is 40.5. So I'm liking Houston. It doesn't really matter because they're a top 10 defense, and somebody in your league probably owns them. I guess that my pick of the week, and this is kind of a stretch, but I'm liking Detroit. I'm liking the Detroit Lions playing at Chicago. They're actually 3-point favorites in this game, and I like Chicago with a lot of newbies and holes in that offense, maybe turning the ball over a lot. But here's my real sleeper pick. I've got Jacksonville. I've got the Jacksonville defense against Indianapolis. For me, the key injury in this game is Trent Cole. Trent Cole, coming off that already shaky offensive line in Indianapolis, one of their better players, he's gone for the season. I think Jacksonville is going to wreak a lot of havoc with the jet-lagged Colts. I also kind of like the Cowboys at the 49ers, but I'm hearing about this Carlos Hyde guy who I don't really believe in. So I won't necessarily.
If that was at home, I think you'd have something there.
Okay, whatever.
I just think their defense is pretty banged up.
I don't know. I think you guys are a game back of the Los Angeles Rams, so you can't be that good.
Wish we could play you guys every week.
How about it? We'd still be looking for a touchdown.
That's funny. Well, that concludes our fantasy show this week. We got to get off the air. We got a couple other shows getting ready to start. But be sure to continue to tune in to all of our podcasts on The Grueling Truth. You can get them on thegruelingtruth.net or any place where there are podcasts like iTunes. We are there. Be sure to check out all of our articles on thegruelingtruth.net and our Facebook page. Follow us at Grueling Truth on Twitter. And you can be sure to re-listen to this podcast if you need any other fantasy advice. Make sure you get it all. We're going through all kinds of stuff every week right here on The Grueling Truth to get you ready for your fantasy leagues. So, for Oz Davis, Aaron Zepnick, I'm Matt Andruscavage. You've been listening to the weekly fantasy football show on the Grueling Truth Radio Network, where the legends speak.